Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books, and today I've got for you a non-spoiler review of Winter's Heart by Robert Jordan, book 9 in the Wheel of Time. We currently have 2 Jordan books left and New Spring, which is a prequel, also written by Jordan, but a very, very short book compared to these big boys. This is the 9th book in the series, as I've said. So what you are going to see in this is no spoilers for this specific book. I'm not going to tell you any of the big plot twists or anything like that. So if you're reading along with me, you don't have to have read Winter's Heart to enjoy this video. However, I will be discussing anything that's happened in books 1 through 8. So that's all free reign. So if you don't want to be spoiled on those things, please don't watch. Go read the books, come back, watch, and then watch this video. And all the others. There's 8 more Wheel of Time videos at least for you to watch. If you have read Winter's Heart, I'll be doing a full spoiler discussion with my friend Matt from Bask in the Story. We've done one for every single book in the Wheel of Time so far, and we will be doing ours at some point before the end of the year. That's the current plan. A lot of this depends. Matt's not been very well, so he's only just getting back to reading it at the moment. So he's a little behind. I usually finish before him anyway, so we'll see. Anyway, so where do we start this book? So I think we've got like 3 or 4 major storylines going on here. So Elaine in Andor is like a big plot point. So Elaine has retaken Andor. I say retaken. Rand always means and has said that he means to give Andor to Elaine. Elaine is like, I don't want to be given the thing that I should have by right. So her and Rand are kind of at loggerheads, but also they're in love with each other. So it's interesting because personally, their relationship is strong. Politically, their relationship is quite fraught. Then we have Perrin, whose wife Fail has been kidnapped by the rebel the rebel Aiel. So the Aiel that refused to swear fealty to Rand, led by the Shido and Savannah, have kidnapped Fail. And you see both sides of that, really. So you see Fael's point of view, where she's in the process of having been kidnapped, and you see Perrin kind of despairing and going a bit mad, like, I have to save my wife, I love my wife, I'm a wife guy. And then we have Matt, the absolute opposite of a wife guy, who is trying to escape the attentions of Queen Tylan, and also the Sean Chan conquered Abu Dar. Altara Abu Dar? Abu Dar is the city, I think. With Matt, we have a load of interesting characters like Tom Merrilin and Julian Sandar and Vannon, the horse thief. And we also get to see some characters that I have been missing for quite a while, actually, in the series. So we get to see Bail Doman again, and we get to see we spent some more time with Olver. I won't tell you who Domon is with, but I really enjoyed that pairing. And then, well, who else have we got? Oh yeah, we've got Rand, obviously. Rand is the main character of the Wheel of Time, ostensibly. He gets, I would say, less and less play across many of these books. Rand has survived an assassination attempt on him by Ashaman, who he is supposedly the leader of, the men that can channel, that have been trained by Mazrim Time, aka the Mahale. And Rand kind of quickly works out that he can't trust the Ashaman, he can't trust Time, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in Rand's story. And Rand is kind of the fulcrum for the real end game stuff at the end of the book, which I really enjoyed. You also get to go to a place called Farmadding. Farmadding is a place that's been discussed a few times in Wheel of Time, but you haven't really found out why it's kind of important or different. And I don't know if that's come up enough that it would be a spoiler to say what is different about it, but I'm not going to, just in case. I don't want to ruin people's enjoyment of the book. Suffice to say that the concept of the town of Farmadding, really liked it. Meeting Aes Sedai from Farmadding, really cool. I really liked the like stripped back adventure almost that like Lan, Nynaeve and Rand go on in Farmadding. I like seeing Rand and Lan together again. They seem to be like Rand and Matt and Perrin are all best friends from Emond's Field, along with Egwene as well, actually, to be fair. They're all best friends. But the thing that I think you see with Lan is that there's a kind of a... You know how sometimes you have, you know, your group of friends and then you meet somebody who you get on so well with because you've very, very similar personalities, whereas Rand, Perrin and Matt are all very different people that get on because they're different. Rand and Lan feel like they're very similar. And they, in fact, have a few discussions about how they're similar. And they talk about Lan and Nynaeve's wedding. Lots of really interesting stuff there with, like, a lot of the character moments with Lan are unspoken because his dialogue is very minimal. But I really liked the minimal unspoken dialogue from Lan. And I think that one of the best things that Jordan's done with this character is everyone kind of interprets him through their own lens. And yeah, really enjoyed Rand and Lan interacting for that section of the book. Nynaeve and Lan are with Rand because Rand has recruited them for a secret mission. And he talks about this really early on in the book, so I am going to discuss this. The secret mission that he's got them to do is that he wants to cleanse the taint on the male half of the One Power. So women can use the One Power with no issue, but men, the male half of the power is tainted, so it makes them physically sick. It makes them go insane by the kind of exposure to this taint over and over and over through time. Eventually makes the men go insane. Really cool story idea. Really liked it. One of the best parts of the Wheel of Time is this dichotomy between male and female power, and how, you know, there's in this world, it's much of the societies are matriarchies. So the women have the political power and the men have the physical power. So you'll see like Andor, for example, has a queen, has never had a king. The queen will have like a husband who is called the king or the consort, but the queen is the ruler, in the opposite way to kind of the way the UK was run many, many, many years ago. And then we've also got the fact that the general for Andor is Gareth Bryn. So the military leaders are mostly male and the political leaders are mostly female. The Ashaman, the male casters, the magic users are called soldiers. So I think they're called dedicated soldier and Ashaman. Whereas the White Tower, the Aes Sedai, are like novices accepted and sisters. So there's a very much a kind of political leaning to the Aes Sedai and to the women in the world of the Wheel of Time. And then and also like the main female character introduced to the concept of Aes Sedai through is from the Blue Arger, which is the political Arger, which are basically master manipulators. They're going out and turning countries on their heads in order to serve what they think is the greater good. Really, really interesting characters conceptually. Yeah, really enjoyed this book overall. We had some really interesting new wrinkles to the magic system as well, with some new Terangreal. Terangreal, for any who do not remember, are like basically gadgets made with the one power that can augment sisters or Ashaman and have sometimes specific abilities. So, for example, we find out that Cadsuane has one that allows her to detect where the one power has been used to a much greater degree than most sisters have, and she's also able to sense Saidin as well as Saidar, and Saidin is the male half of the source. So yeah, I think there's a lot to go. There's a lot to go into and a lot to talk about in terms of the gender politics of the Wheel of Time, and we do of course see people on both sides of the spectrum who are very different. So, you know, we see people like Brigitte, who has absolutely no head for politics and is a soldier at heart. We see characters like Matt, for example, who is a master manipulator and talks about it frequently in his narration, but is obviously male. And so there's a lot to talk about when it comes to gender in the Wheel of Time, and I do think that eventually, when I finish the series, I think that there's a really interesting video where I actually go into depth and discuss it. The thing that I would like to do there is speak to a female booktuber who's read The Wheel of Time and get their point of view. It's a very long and drawn out topic, and it's something that Matt and I haven't talked too much about in our full spoiler discussions, mostly because we're two white men, whereas maybe there's probably a better voice for that out there. Anyway, so I think the story in this book is really good, and I really, really like the ending. I'll say that again. One of the things that I thought was quite interesting as well is that this book is kind of segmented, so you tend to get a ton of chapters in a row of one particular character's story. So, like, the book opens with Elaine, I think. The book opens with like Elaine's chapters, and we come back to Elaine later in the book, but the majority of her stuff is in that one chunk. And then we get some chapters from Rand, I think, and then Perrin chapters. And the interesting thing is, like, we get the chunk of Perrin chapters. We don't really come back to Perrin very much. Then there's a huge chunk of Matt chapters, and then the final end of the book is like Rand, Nynaeve, Min, Lan, all of those characters. We also get to learn a bit more about Cadsuane. I think she's genuinely really interesting as well. Cadsuane feels like a character that may have been created to fill the Moraine void. I've still been thinking the entire time that Moraine is coming back. I did actually think that Moraine was secretly Sindain in this book. I won't spoil whether that is or is not true, but that was my ongoing theory as the book kind of began. We also get to see a lot of what's going on with the forces of the dark, the Black Arja, and we get to see a little bit inside the White Tower. I was sad not to spend really any time with Egwene this book, or to really spend any time with Elida, because I found that we've had a couple of Elida POV chapters, and I've really enjoyed them. Seeing kind of how deep in she is, how over her head, how she's being basically controlled by her keeper of the Chronicles, Aleandra, I want to say. We could be right, we could be wrong. There's a lot of names that are quite similar. My big negative for this book, I do feel like this one was a little better than Path of Daggers, because the big thing with Path of Daggers is fixing the weather, which happens like 20% into the book, and then there's no real significant thing that happens from there on. Whereas in Winter's Heart, the big significant thing is at the end of the book. So that's really good. And I think that is a marked improvement on the previous entry. I did still really like both entries. I do think Winter's Heart is better. Winter's Heart is... Path of Daggers was quite good because it was quite focused and short. It's one of the shortest Wheel of Time books. And I really enjoyed having that more... It did feel a bit more focused. This, due in part to the fact that we don't range too much around, so we don't get like Rand chapter, Perrin chapter, Matt chapter. The chapters are all kind of bunched together, so that does feel a bit more focused, but we lose out a little bit on the pacing. I think that maybe we could have switched POV a few more times. It did really feel like the Matt chapters in particular felt like they were just all bunched up together. I actually listened to a lot of this one via Audible. So I drove down to visit Ross and Laura from Hardy's Books at their brand new bookshop yesterday. And that ended up being almost 8 hours of driving. So I listened to the final section of Winter's Heart while driving down the M25. And it definitely kept me entertained in standstill traffic, which was really good. And like I said, the ending was very good. I've seen a few people say that it made the Forsaken out to kind of be punks, that they were kind of like, not very powerful, easily done away with. But one of the things that I think is quite interesting about the Forsaken is like they're powerful one power users for sure, and they know the old spells and tricks, but I don't think they're anything more powerful than like. So we know that Nynaeve, for example, is more powerful than one of the Forsaken, and there's people who are more powerful than Nynaeve who are there at the finale. We also heard that like some of them are actually not particularly strong in the power. There's some abilities that Rand and Co have discovered that they didn't know. So it's kind of like the most powerful guys in the one power who also were willing to switch to the bad dude's side. So very interesting characters, and I think that as we see more of them, the more I'm like, these guys are kind of losers, like, and that's okay. Like, the bad guy is, the dark one. The bad guy isn't, like Demandred or whatever. I like the idea of the like reincarnations and changing bodies and things like that. I also really enjoyed the return of a villain from some of the earlier books. Fairly important antagonist, and one who I don't want to spoil who they are, but they are from, you see them as early as Eye of the World, and I think that them coming back and kind of the brief appearance they have was really interesting, and it kind of cements my theory that maybe that particular character will end up, very high up in the last battle. It feels like maybe there's a few characters who are being set up to be like the general of the last battle or what have you, and I'm looking forward to reading that 400-page chapter or whatever it is when I do get to it. That book I'm sure will be fantastic, because Sanderson loves finishing stuff. He's very good at it. I'm really looking forward to reading Sanderson's books, despite I think some reservations about the writing quality, because Sanderson's writing is very, very accessible. Jordan's is accessible too, but not on the level of Sanderson. I think Sanderson is very democratized, very modern, very accessible, whereas Jordan is very much like, what he's talking about, but he is using older, flowerier language and words and stuff. He's kind of the perfect middle ground for me between someone who's a very prose-focused author and someone like Sanderson, who is a very plot and story-focused author. Jordan is a much better writer than Sanderson, though Sanderson can really nail the ends of stuff, which I think is actually Jordan's weakness. It's possibly the reason why his Wheel of Time series balloons to 11 books, and he's like, oh, just need one more to finish it, and Sanderson's like, no, you need 3 more books. So, yeah, looking forward to reading Sanderson stuff. I genuinely will be sad when I've read the last Robert Jordan Wheel of Time book. And I think that I was talking to some friends, well, to Ross, Laura, and Mare yesterday. I think that the Wheel of Time is probably one of the only series in my life that I know I will reread, and possibly multiple times. It might be the series that I go and revisit certain chapters, certain moments, just to kind of get that feel again. Which I often do with like some of my favourite films and TV shows. I'll be like, I'm just going to watch this scene from this film, that sort of thing. So yeah, might be something that I revisit on that scale. I bought, my wife has bought me for Christmas the Origins of the Wheel of Time companion book. There's also 2 more Wheel of Time like non-fiction books, basically, and I'm genuinely curious to read those as well, because I love the world of the Wheel of Time. I love the characters. I love the magic. Everything about these books has really captured me in a way that it makes it so obvious. The deeper I get in, the more I'm like, I get it. This is why it's everybody's #1 favourite series of all time. Like, I get it. Like, when I read Lord of the Rings, right, when I read Lord of the Rings, I've tried to read Lord of the Rings a few times, and every time I just fall off. And I get bored, it doesn't hit for me at all. But it's just not, like, when I see people who put Lord of the Rings as, like, their #1 fantasy series of all time, I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, I can see why some people might like it, but the kind of story, the kind of book, the kind of writing is just not for me, and it wouldn't even be near my top 10. But reading Wheel of Time, and I was kind of apprehensive about it. In fact, when I first started reading, I actually only bought book 1. I can't remember what book I was at when I went out and just bought the rest. How much did it cost? So I bought them in the Orbit half price sale, and it was £45. So 9 books. So because they were about £5 each. That's 9 books. So I was 5 books in when I decided I wanted to read it, and I wanted to own permanently a collection of the Wheel of Time. And I've never been happier with that decision. I love these editions of the books with these photo covers. I love that they make the symbol of the Wheel of Time along the side. Everything about Wheel of Time has just absolutely nailed it for me. And I wanted to, we're going to close the video out now. I've just been talking about how much I love the Wheel of Time for the last 3 minutes. I ended up giving this one a 5-star, I think. It feels like a 5-star read. The ending was incredible. I love the farm adding stuff. Yeah, it feels 5-star to me. I do wish we had more Egwene, and I feel like the pacing could have been better if it was a bit more interwoven. But other than that, those are like, if I am reaching for a complaint, those are my complaints. I was never, ever listening to this book going, oh, I wish I could be reading something else, And that's what I feel like sometimes weaker books will bring me to. So, yeah, while we're at the end, let's get emotional, guys. I just want to thank you as an audience, as subscribers. If you're subscribed, please do if you haven't. I want to thank you guys for encouraging me with reading Wheel of Time, for bringing this story to me. I don't know if I would have read the Wheel of Time if I didn't have a booktube channel. I had always looked at the Wheel of Time and gone, oh, that's old, because most of the fantasy stuff that I read is from the 2010s onwards. And looking at Wheel of Time going, oh, it's old. It's probably not going to be very my sort of thing. It'll be more like Lord of the Rings, and you know, the first book is compared to Lord of the Rings constantly. So there was a lot about these books that I was like, oh, I just don't think that this is going to be the series for me. And when I started booktube, I was like, I feel like I want to read the big series, and I feel like the three big series are, no, four. Let's talk about four big series. It's Wheel of Time, Malazan, Realm of the Elderlings, and the Cosmere. And I'd already read the Cosmere. I've read some of Realm of the Elderlings, and should that have been my first series? Possibly, because I could have then finished what I had started. But c'est la vie. I had thought about reading Malazan multiple times over the last year or so I've had the channel. But what ended up was when Broken Binding announced they were going to do it, I was like, well, I'll buy those and I'll read those. So that will be the Malazan that I read. And I've just been kind of waiting for those to turn up. I do have a copy of Gardens of the Moon and I own all the ebooks apart from the Crippled God, because it has never been on sale for a good enough price. But yeah, so long story short, thank you very much for watching the channel. I hope that you've enjoyed this review. I hope that you will stick around and watch my spoiler discussion with Matt. Yeah, I'm going to go and edit this video and then read some Cosmere, because there's a big new Cosmere book out.